Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, one of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, as well as one of the co-hosts of the Basement Radio Arcade podcast, also on YouTube. Back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going weekly video games podcast. This is episode number 325 for the week that was in gaming of January 28th, 29th, something like that. It is Sunday, the 4th of February, and here with me, as always, I have my stalwart partner in crime, Mr. Towmaster 99. How you doing, Tow?
I'm doing well. I'm not doing a Clutch Cargo impersonation right now. I do have a static image right now because I'm having some webcam issues, so I'll probably just leave it like that for now.
No worries at all. I'm getting an opportunity. Actually, it's my second run to try out a new mic tonight. This is the Elgato DX, their dynamic microphone, which actually I'm pretty happy with. Given that it's a dynamic mic, it is surprisingly my big problem with dynamic mics is you typically have to crank up the gain so much because they're unpowered, so they don't have 48 volt phantom power coming in. So I really have to crank up the volume. But I generally like them. I think at the end of the day, I prefer condenser mics because they're powered. However, condenser mics, when you crank them up, they have an earlier threshold where you start getting kind of dirty sound. So you know, the louder they are, closer to the top end, they get distorted and they don't sound as good. But with dynamic mics, they tend to sound good but not be very loud. But this one is surprisingly loud, and actually it was surprisingly heavy when I took it out of the case, out of the box too, when it shipped. So pretty happy with it so far.
Yeah, sounds pretty good.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, appreciate it. Speaking of which, let's start right there with our first story. DBQ unfortunately could not. Well, he will be joining us later, probably. And so, but he is the only one who has been playing anything new. All of us have been playing games that had previously released. Although there's still people playing. Not me. But I know, Tao, you've got some games that I would normally consider in the window of new-ish since they're 2024 releases. Yeah. But regardless with the way the agenda is set up now, nobody's got anything in the upfront segment 1 where we do our main GX stories, focusing primarily on new release games. So we're going to go straight into the news. And the first story is over on Engadget, coincidentally, to go along with the mic that I mentioned. It's Elgato introduces its first ever HDMI 2.1 capture cards. I wanted to go ahead and cover the story because I actually ordered one of these, and because it's been a long time since we've gotten a chance to kind of talk about live streaming technology and podcasting technology and stuff like that. So I went ahead and threw this story in the roundup. As I mentioned, over on Engadget, Elgato introduces its first ever HDMI 2.1 capture cards. So Elgato's going all in on HDMI 2.1. The company just announced a pair of capture cards that support the latest display technology specification. The 4K-X and 4K Pro offer true HDR10 support, USB 3.2 connectivity, VRR, and can capture 4K gameplay at 144 frames per second. Also, this card actually works with the newer USB-C iPad models. This is the first time a capture card is offered native support for iPads, according to Elgato and parent company Corsair. The 4K-X is compatible with both Windows and Mac computers and captures 4K gameplay at 144 frames per second. You need a native display that supports these metrics. Otherwise, you'll capture 4K at 120 frames per second. You don't get any screen tearing with this device due to the magic of HDMI 2.1. That remains to be seen. The thing that's cool about this is, so the Achilles heel of live streaming is that, you know, you can have the biggest, for PC, you can have the biggest, beefiest graphics card in the world. And if you're going through a capture card, which I do, I stream using the 2 PC method. So I have one PC that is my gaming PC, and then I use a second PC as the capture machine or the live streaming machine. There will be people who will argue, well, you could do all that on one PC. You could, but I find from a troubleshooting perspective that then you always wind up having to kind of finagle with the all-in-one box, because if it's a game such as Call of Duty, which normally doesn't have any problems performing on my hardware, but if I start live streaming, then that can start impacting like gameplay frame rate and things like that. And I just rather not be bothered with having to troubleshoot that or look into that. So, but the Achilles heel is that then A lot of capture cards, most capture cards, top out at 60 frames per second. They don't do HDR pass through, and they don't do any higher frame rate, particularly VRR pass through. So, not having advanced access to those advanced technologies means that you've got this big beefy PC, but you're going through a capture card. So just like, this weekend I was doing some game capture of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, and despite the fact that I'm playing on an RTX 4080 with a Ryzen 7800 X3D, I have to put it through at 1920 by 1080p at 60 frames per second, which isn't a big deal. I don't live stream as much as I used to do anymore, but when I used to live stream like all the time, that was just used to always make me cranky. So it's nice that they have these cards, and then you've had this kind of intermediate generation of cards come along, which have done a lot of the pass through, but they haven't done it all. Like they would pass through like higher frame rates, but then they wouldn't do HDR and they wouldn't do higher resolutions. Then, you have cards that will do higher resolutions, but they'll still be capped at 60 frames per second. And they, again, don't pass through HDR. So it's nice having these cards on the market now that will pass through all of those advanced technologies, in particular allow you to do VRR. And again, I've been speaking primarily about PC, but for consoles, it's an even bigger deal. And most live streamers, I would contend, come in on console. They initially come in using the rather horrible console implementation of live streaming. Whatever the onboard YouTube app is or Twitch app or whatever it is, and then eventually they go, hey, this is really horrible. I really need a PC to live stream, and they build a PC and they throw a GPU in it just because, it's ostensibly better and it's an easier solution if you have a dedicated GPU in the box to do live streaming. But then from there, then they fall down the hill and get into PC gaming, and that's kind of their gateway drug to PC gaming. So, this will be a good card for those for those console gamers coming in. So there are two cards. There's an HDMI. There's a USB-C external capture card, which is the one that I ordered. And then there is an internal card, which I never use the internal ones. Those will use your PCIe 4X port. And the reason I don't use them is because then, that's the last thing that I want to have a reason to go into a box and monkey with the internals, when I'm doing an upgrade or try to find space. I also, most of my GPUs are also, 3 and 4 slot, like big Mongo cards, that I already have to put like a retention bracket on or put them on top, like a retention tower spacer. And that, a capture card sitting below it, would just be yet another problem. And then sometimes might block the cooling solution that I have in there. So I didn't personally go with the internal card. But for people who are like real, video, professionals or, or super high-end live streamers who, are trying to, monetize and make a living out of it, maybe that's a good solution for them. That card is better, in terms of it actually supports 240 frames per second. Up to 4K for pass-through, and then you can capture 4K. Says you can capture 4K content at 1080p and 240, so it takes the 4K input and drops it to 1080p. I thought the external capture card, allows you to pass through 4K at 144, and I thought it allows you to capture at 1440p. So you'll capture 4K at 120 frames per second. Yeah, so, some nice things here for live streamers and whatnot. Compatible with OBS, Twitch Studio, Streamlabs, all those things. And does, it mentions that it will export content as AAF files for Adobe. I am assuming that it also still does it as MP4. I use Adobe, but I'll be kind of cranky if, but a lot of times, I just take a native MP4 output to post it up to Twitter. So hopefully it doesn't force me to go through the Creative Suite to extract this thing. So the internal or the external card costs $230 and the internal card costs $280. So the 4KX, which is the USB-C external card, is $230, and the internal one is $280. And then the only other nit you might have, and I'm waiting to see this, is current PCs are this weird hodgepodge of USB 3.0, USB 3.1, USB 3.2. It's often a really goofy like internal connector that's required to actually hook up to a USB 3 header port. Not all motherboards have a USB 3 header port. Your case often doesn't have, your motherboard may have the header port, but your case doesn't have the connector. So it's always a mess and a bother. So it kind of remains to be seen exactly which PCs I have that that have all the necessary connectors that I might be trying to use this with. So, but nice arrival on the scene. It's unfortunate we're 3 years into the console generation and HDMI 2.1 capture cards are just showing up. So Tal, I know you live stream a little. Any interest in these, or have you been keeping your eyes on it, or did you get the newsletter email that let you know that these had arrived?
Yeah, I haven't streamed in, it's probably been over a year now. But yeah, I mean, it looks interesting. I was going to ask you a question. I'm trying to think. Oh, so is this one of the first cards you've gotten in a while? Because I know you would kind of switch between. I forgot the other one you had besides the Elgato. Was it?
Well, I've got a few. So, I mean, I've told the story before. So when I first got into live streaming, a big part of my shtick was, because I'm not a great entertainer with a huge personality, so I'm never going to be as big as like Dr. Disrespect or anything. So my shtick was I would because I had reviewed, because I was like, a PC component reviewer and a mobile device reviewer, I immediately went in on kind of the review end. So I would get lots of different types of equipment and review them and then provide tech support for other live streamers, who were trying to figure things out, or big streamers who were actually, it's kind of funny. Gosh, now I can't remember his name, Cam something or other. But there's been a couple streamers, who I helped out right as they were just arriving on Twitch, and they're like super big, partner level Twitch streamers now. So, but I have. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember if I have like the older cards, but yeah, but I all those types of those flavors of cards that I mentioned, I have like the older cards that just do 1080p 60. I have a couple of those. I have a few that will do like 4K 30 pass through, 4K 60 pass through, but then they will only capture at 1080p. Mostly everything that I have pretty much only captures at 1080p 60. But I have a couple that will do pass through. So and mostly it's not because you were asking, it's been a while since I bought one of these. It's not been because I haven't been interested in buying them. It's because they've slowed down. So, you go back to 2000. What is it, 23 now? You go back to like 2016, 17, 18, 19, probably those like 3 or 4 years. There was a new capture card coming out like every month, every 2 months. But since the new console generations really came around, like a lot of the cards that are on the market now are just older, cards that came out in 2019. That's really kind of weird. And I don't know if HDMI 2.0 caused this hitch or what, but like particularly this console generation, there just haven't been really new cards that have come out. Avermedia has put out.
Avermedia, that was the other one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say they've put out like in the last 3 years, they've put out like maybe 3 capture cards. One of which is like a Thunderbolt capture card. So like I don't have anything that has Thunderbolt that can use that. Or the only thing you would use that with really is a laptop, right? That came with it. And I guess that's the market they were targeting, but like I haven't had any use for it. So whereas before they used to just always kind of constantly roll these out like every few months. I think in general, like the pace of technology surrounding capture has kind of settled and slowed to where there's just nothing really new coming along. And then it seems to have taken them a while to get their arms around this HDMI 2.1 spec. So,
yeah, the last one I got was the Elgato HD60S, I think was the last one I had, which is just 1080 also. And I think not too long after that, they had announced the X, which was, I think, it could do 4K, I believe, right?
It does pass through. So, yeah, I've got the 60S. I was actually using the 60S this weekend, and then I have the 60X. Which form factor wise, this 4KX is the same form factor. But yeah, the 60X can do pass through, but I'm pretty sure it only captures at 1080p 60 still.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, I don't do streaming, like I said, but I'll do some recordings every once in a while still. So, which, I kind of feel bad because it's like, I got this got this piece of tech and it's like I'm not using it, so I got to do something. So at least I'll record some stuff. So
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel too. A lot of times I do it out of a feeling of guilt over buying it. So, but enough about live streaming. Let's go ahead and talk about Palworld because we have a couple stories to get through on that topic. Why don't you go ahead and start first?
all right, yeah. The first one I got here is from IGN, from Isaiah Colbert. I don't know how you say his last name. And this was on the heels. So this was kind of in the afternoon article that was posted, but this is kind of on the heels in the morning of the same day, this January 31st, where Palworld had announced they had hit their 19 million player mark as far as games sold. And that was split between 12 million from Steam, and then the other additional 7 was from Xbox through Game Pass. This came out in Game Pass. But this particular article is talking how Xbox is working closely with the developers. Pocket Pair, I forgot. I believe that's the developers. Pocket Pair, excuse me. So on Xbox parts, we're working with Pocket Pair to help provide support for Xbox version of the game. We're providing support to enable dedicated servers, which is only available on Steam right now, and then offering engineering resources to help with GPU and memory optimization, speeding up the process to make Palworld updates available for players, and working with the team to optimize the title for our platform. So, like, if you're on, and I don't know, like maybe people who watch this uh, podcast or listen to it, or most podcasts, they probably know, I would think, that on Steam, on PC, you know, I don't know if there's any kind of, there might be kind of a like a certification or like a process they have to go through, obviously, but it's a little bit more, I think, lenient than Xboxes, where it takes like usually like a week or so on Xboxes.
It is. It is. I mean, it is lenient to the point of being non-existent on Steam. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the big problem a few years ago. Remember when they opened up the kind of the waterfall and just basically like removed whatever certification hoops you had to jump through to get a game on Steam and allowed people to publish and push directly to the storefront. And that was the year that we started seeing games start getting to the rate of like 10,000 games a year published on Steam, which is one of its problems. And yet, and today, not yet today, but in today, the Xbox certification process still kind of has the reputation of being like the most draconian and the most Byzantine. Right now, I shouldn't say Byzantine. It's pretty deterministic. I would call the App Store process a Byzantine process, where you never know for certain if your game's going to get through or not. But the Xbox process, I think, is pretty deterministic. But it is regimented, in terms of what you have to do to achieve Xbox certification and get to the storefront.
More rigorous. so so yeah, and so like I said, it's usually at least a week, I would say, at the very least, and usually more than that, really, when they if there's like a simultaneous game that's working on both systems, obviously the PC update and from the Xbox update comes out, so they're slightly version behind. I mean, technically it has pretty much, you could do everything on the Xbox side that you do on PC side. It's more kind of like optimization and well, like the dedicated servers, obviously, since they don't have that right now. Um, that kind of thing. That's kind of different between the two games. And there's no crossplay either right now. And they had already said, I think even before it blew up, like before, when they were just talking about the game, that there's going to be crossplay at some point between PC and Game Pass PC and Xbox console with the Steam version. So they're all getting Xbox's help on that right now, which I think that's kind of cool that they actually came out and said that. Now I'm assuming, I don't know if they do that for everybody or if this is just like I'm assuming they do. Like if someone's having issues, I'm assuming they would try to do that. But I don't know if this is, or if this is just like a special case because it's so popular right now. They're just trying to get get it going. But I mean, on Xbox's part, by saying that though, I don't know if they might kind of open the floodgates for like other people and other companies saying, hey, whoa, why aren't we getting this kind of support too? So I don't know if this is like I said, I don't know if this is a regular thing they actually do, and maybe they just said it this time because there is kind of a big outcry in the Palworld community, or at least the console community, where they definitely need some optimization and stuff like that. So I don't know if you know anything else on that end game.
Yeah, it's all guesswork. But what I would say is two things is Xbox, I don't feel we have a super good handle on, on the full releases for the year and like when they're going to drop. Like we know Towerborn. I don't know if we know a date for Towerborn other than 2024. We know Hellblade, which is May 2024. I think that actually has a date.
May 21st.
Okay. We know Indiana Jones, which has a fall 2024 release expectation. But I also feel my own perspective is that is a game that could slip to 2025. With Xbox feeling that they wouldn't necessarily anger their hyper loyal fan base to slip it into Q1 of 2025. I don't know that I'm sure it's out there that whatever the fourth game is. But my point is I think it's a good thing for them to get after something like this, right? To sustain the subscription service and help kind of buff out their portfolio, which I still don't know this year is guaranteed to be particularly robust. The other thing I will say is I wrote extensively today about the Xbox strategy, which I think some people are running around feeling that it's a new strategy. And I actually wrote extensively about it and then tied what I'd said back to an interview of Sarah Bond back in January of 2022 before they announced their Activision acquisition. So, which basically corroborated everything I've been saying since late 2022. But part of that is this notion of bridging a gap for creators to allow them to create, build, deploy, operate, and then for Xbox to monetize. I call it, my CB-DOM thesis, but it's a lot of what's been said for a very long time, but then I'm putting that acronym on it as well. And this is the type of thing that would be a core component of that strategy, right? Would be to bridge the gap, in terms of capabilities, tools, and utilities for a developer trying to get to customers via, right, a road, a highway, a fabric that Xbox really controls. But part of the uptake of that is for Xbox to convince creators that not only will it do that in terms of the technology that it will provide, but also will provide, right, the engineering consultation services, right, that need to go along with it. And so I think this is, in my opinion, this is part of that, winning of hearts and minds amongst the developer and creator community, that, hey, we're gonna create this fabric where you're gonna be able to, in the future, the strategic intent is for Pocket Pair to not only build this game woven into the Xbox fabric, the hybrid cloud compute, for the purposes of Xbox and PC, but to also allow them to then reach PlayStation, Nintendo, any other platform that they so choose. So I think this is kind of an essential part of them kind of setting the groundwork and the stage for that type of strategy, or else, developers, as they have in the past, right? Developers aren't necessarily gonna buy into it.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the issues that some of the council people have been saying, only because when I did play, I've only played very small amount of time on the Xbox side, but I was only doing it on single player, and I think most of the issues are all multiplayer related. So I could see how people would be mad. Obviously, they want to jump in there with their friends and stuff, and I think it's limited to 4 people on a server right now that you can get into with. So obviously, if they get those dedicated servers up, that's gonna bump them up to 32, just like on the PC. So that'll be a lot more people, but hopefully they get everything going fairly soon. Obviously, it takes time though. I think that's majority of people just don't understand that. So, and welcome, DB.
Yeah, we want to welcome DBQ to the show. How you doing, DB?
Gentlemen, thanks for getting started without me. Sorry about that, everybody. You never know what's going to happen when you show up and a dog is covered in doggy diarrhea. So, unexpected plans right before the show starts, but glad to be here. So let's keep moving through the news stories.
Yeah, with that being said, let's go on to the next news story, which is over on PC Gamer. This article by Tyler Wild. Palworld server costs near $500K per month as network engineers ordered to never let the service go down no matter what. And I quote, monster collecting survival game Palworld has amassed an astonishing 19 million players, and that extraordinary success isn't coming cheap for its indie developer. Palworld's projected February server costs are 70 million yen, according to a post from Pocket Pair CEO Takuro Mizobi. That comes to over 475K in US dollars. Wait, maybe we'll go bankrupt from server fees, joked Mizobi, machine translated from Japanese. I wouldn't worry too much. Pocket Pair says it's sold about 12 million copies of Palworld on Steam at $30 each. That puts Palworld's gross revenue at $360 million so far, and that's ignoring its Xbox sales. It's on Gamepass too. A few other numbers in here. You know what Steam's cut is. Blah 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 blah. Yeah. So, and I even take umbrage to this financial analysis. So, I had done my own. After I saw this tweet and the story drop, and I think my big kind of pushback on people who've been having this conversation is that there was this feeling that, I guess this is people who have spoken to the presence of Ark Survival on the market, but don't really know and understand the business model of Ark Survival on the market. So, because there were a lot of people arguing with me that, it happened, they gain their revenue at point of sale and they're done. And I was like, no, this is a live service game with all of the trappings that are, but it doesn't have microtransactions. It's not the same dynamic. It doesn't have microtransactions, but in order to sell more games, gamers don't want to play an online game that isn't being played by other people. And so that means they have to maintain their current player base, and they have to grow that player base, because those people then encourage other people to onboard and come into the game. It has essentially all of the trappings and dynamics of a regular live service game, of a Call of Duty, of a Knockout City, because that's the thing that people took a lot of umbrage to. They were like, you shouldn't be comparing it to Knockout City. Then I go back, and at 10 seconds of Googling, I find an article and an interview from the studio for Ark Survival, and they talk about exactly the things that I had said, which is that, hey, we have to create this gravimetric force of maintained player engagement in order to continue bringing other people in and to continue to grow the base so that we sell more instances of the game. And so Ark Survival has implemented a roadmap, and these guys are too, that is very similar to kind of the Destiny roadmap, Destiny 2 roadmap, minus the microtransactions, right? It's very much like kind of the Warframe approach, right? It's these incremental drops of expansions that further the story, and that are designed to engage the player base, or like in the Destiny 2 example and framework, draw that player base back in, when the new thing drops, so that they'll pass it on by word of mouth and other people will be attracted, and people will see their concurrent user numbers and they will, be attracted to come in. I talk about this all the time with these live service games that drop. People are going to gravitate towards the ones that have the most players. You're not going to look at this. You're not going to go to the Steam store, look at the charts, go to the bottom of the chart where there's the least number of people playing a game and say, oh, that's the game I'm going to play. You're going to play the one that has the most players on it. So, and that's what happens particularly with new gamers when they come in, because they are the most impressionable. So, so the cost of $500K, there's data out there that shows maybe that the cost of the Fortnite servers back in 2018 ran anywhere from $600K to $3 million, depending on the elasticity rate of their player base and how engaged they were in a month. That's the server cost. That's not cloud spend in its entirety. For cloud spend, you get charged for compute, you get charged for memory, you get charged for storage. Here's the big kicker. You get charged for either data ingress and data egress, or both. And so when you're running a service that is constantly transferring packets back and forth, depending on what the cloud service provider's framework is, that is also going to be a cost driver for you. And so this $475K isn't the entirety of their cloud spend. So as you increase the player base, you have to build out more. You have to scale horizontally. One of the big things that you're also buying with that is you're also buying redundancy capacity. Just because your server is not spooled doesn't necessarily mean that you're paying zero cost. There are frequently things that go along with that. The other thing is, most of these cloud service providers give you credits based on consumption, and so there's weird hills and valleys where when you have a low month, sometimes it actually winds up costing you a bit more on a per user basis because you're not getting as much in discount credits, right? Because you don't have as many users. So the point is that this game has costs. The costs are going to get worse the more players they bring on. They've got to create content in order to support people. As the OpEx gets bigger, as the operations tail gets bigger, they've got to employ more people. You need more DevOps people. You need more SREs. This game has a maintenance. It has an ops tail that goes along with it, and it's one of the reasons why the financial outlook of maintaining a game like this is different. It's one of the reasons why you see layoffs at studios like we talked about earlier this month, because their complaint was that their operational costs were what was killing them, not their capital investments that were associated with, the salaries involved with the development staff, but the operational costs, in cloud spend or, maintaining the staff that goes along with maintaining the game. So let's stop saying that, a live service game launches, it doesn't have microtransactions, so it's okay, and they're just fine when they sell a lot of games. That's not the tale of the story. So any comments from you guys?
Well, I think for me, it's a great segue also into the next story as well. But I think that whole idea of thinking about games that have an ongoing, whether they call themselves live service or not, but something that is running off of a server, that is a multiplayer game, the kind of long-term spend there is not something that often gets talked about, right? Like we talk about the development costs, we talk about the marketing budget. We don't always talk about that kind of the sustaining budget, that kind of ongoing maintenance budget, which I think is where games that live in the margins really struggle.
Yeah, and it's even beyond that. It's not just like keeping what you have, but like I mentioned in the Twitter thread that I wrote, when you have something like that, you also have to constantly be preparing for the future. So having something like this also drives the fact that you've got to have cloud architects and solution architects on staff who are constantly working on. You've got DevOps people and SREs who are working on a thing that we call perfected maintenance. So they're always, keeping the things up, but they're also constantly working on incremental improvements, right? Because a thing toppled over the last time, and they're like, well, that's not going to happen again. Or they do, a manual update or a manual fix 3 or 4 times. And for software developers, that's the point where we say, okay, I've done that 3 or 4 times. That means that needs to be automated, right? So, and then there's configuration management that goes along with that, because the guy writes a script, and therefore he doesn't want to lose the script. He or she doesn't want to lose the script, and so it needs to be configuration managed. It needs to be tested, blah blah blah. But what I was saying is, then you've constantly got to be, you have to have solution architects on board who are keeping up with AWS technology and new services that are coming into play and figuring out how to modernize that and where's the roadmap and when do you do the technology step up. And that means that some things are going to have to be shut down because you can't implement this new technology and deploy it and roll it out without, shutting off parts of the system. So there's a reason people make a lot of money doing this stuff, right? It's not just push button. It's not just obvious. So yeah, it has baggage that goes along with it. Sorry. I say sorry, but actually,
I was going to say, don't say sorry. It actually is a valuable discussion and one that doesn't always get hit upon within the media. So,
yeah, and with that, for something that we should actually have sympathy for, do you want to go ahead and talk about Airship Syndicate?
Yeah, so Airship Syndicate, it's a small studio. It is the core studio who did the first 2 Darksiders games, then did the League of Legends Ruin King, kind of the turn-based strategy. They did the Battle Chasers game. But last year they came with an early access game called Wayfinder. It was announced in a PlayStation State of Play back in early 23, and it came out, but it's still in early access. But it is, it's a multiplayer game. It's third person kind of World of Warcraft like in terms of kind of the art design, but it fits very much in that kind of Darksiders art design as well. But it is a studio who was partnered. Digital Extreme from Warfare was their publisher for this game. back in the fall. I think it was November. Digital Extremes had their own cuts, and one of the things that they cut was they gave this title back to the company. Airship Syndicate now owns this. Digital Extremes is no longer publishing it and supporting it. So it's really on this small team to keep this game going. As we just talked about with Palworld, they're in early access trying to make a live service game. Yes, there are cosmetic microtransactions, but there is a huge amount, as Game Logic was just saying, a huge amount of ongoing costs. And so they only had this new article this week from GameIndustry.biz that they laid off 12 people. Again, percentage wise, it doesn't share how many that is, but they also talk about how the president and CEO have taken significant pay cuts in terms of that restructuring. So and this is a game that's still in early access, whether it even gets enough traction to support itself, to get out of early access, to maintain as they continue to try to reduce costs and keep this game sustainable. And I think this is why that conversation that we just had with Palworld is really meaningful, because it's hard to break into this. Not every game can be pitched as Pokemon with guns and get a whole lot of concurrent views on Steam and hit in the top 5 of all time on Steam. For smaller studios who are trying something new and trying something different, it is a really difficult space to break into. And then even if you can get a game out in early access, keeping it afloat is also a real challenge. And so that's why this stood out to me in terms of, as last week, as we were talking about kind of, B-tier games and kind of smaller studios and new IPs, that it's a really difficult world to exist in as a game developer when there are these not only startup costs, but the ongoing costs as well.
So a question I want to ask, and Tao, I want to ask you this, and also, I apologize if I kind of skipped you in the rotation. If you had any comments about either the Palworld server costs or the Airship Syndicate layoffs. So we talked a little bit the first week that you were playing this, and talked about, the survivability of this game, no pun intended. And I think a refined variant of that question is, we've got Ark Survival Evolved. We have a handful of like some really niche, like kind of super weirdo games that are out there, primarily propped up by the live streaming community, who had often go in on a little bit because they pay bad games, and then they create this image that those games are market addressable, because they're popular on Twitch. But I often talk about how, you look at the Twitch charts, and then you look at the sales charts, and then you look at the review scores, and you should pick out the things that are in the Twitch charts that are like, not harmonized with one of the other two lists. But so Ark Survival has found a footprint. Actually, it's kind of funny that as Palworld is experiencing a lot of success, the guys propping up Ark are seemingly having lots of problems deploying updated versions to servers, and that may be part of what's going on, is that we see Ark in a bathtub right now, potentially allowing for the rise of Palworld. And that also causes me to ask the question, I've talked about with the battle royales, right, that we've learned over the years that there's just not room for anything but ostensibly the 2 or 3 big powerhouse franchises. Is there only room for one survival game on the market, like big multiplayer, prodigious kind of, I'll use the term AAA, that may not be perfectly appropriate, but kind of survival game that is capable of capturing the zeitgeist of the niche that will play it and keep that game as an ongoing going concern on the market, achieving some reasonable amount of success, and then everything below that one game, right, is basically lives on life support until it just can't be sustained anymore?
Yeah, they're trying to get the scraps. I mean, you have, even before Ark, I mean, you have Rust that's been around for 10 years now. They just celebrated their 10-year anniversary. And, obviously it's a little bit different because there's no creatures, or, I mean, there's wildlife, but it's like regular, boars and deer and stuff like that. It's not these fantastical dinosaurs or these other like Pokemon like creatures. But I think they were like the big kid on the big kid on the block, or in the playground for the longest time. And now I've noticed this last year, maybe like 9 months now, but I see more of these type of games starting to come out now. You got Palworld, you got Enshrouded that came out the same week, or the next week, I think, when Palworld had come out. And then there's a couple other games that I think I've seen the rounds like going around like the YouTube channels and just articles and stuff, and I can't remember what they are, but you're starting to see more of these type of games starting to come out. And I mean, it takes a lot of dedications to get into these games. Like, I mean, yeah, I played Ark for like the longest time, but that's all I've been playing. And same with Palworld. Like that's all I've been playing the past like 3 weeks is Palworld. Like you have to like just get into that game. You basically live it. Like it's not like, um, something like Hogwarts Legacy that I've been kind of playing off and on for the last year or so. I can come back to it, put it down, whatever. That's a single player game. This is the thing, you have to constantly be, in the game and playing these games, because there's so much that happens and there's updates and all this other stuff. And it kind of depends too, because looking back on Rust, like Rust really hasn't changed all that much. Like it's pretty much the same from what I've seen at the beginning. From what it was like, yeah, they've added guns, and they got maybe they added some some more points on the map. Like there's like a tank now that kind of patrols like a little section of the map and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's pretty much the same. But then you got like Ark, where they were adding like different animals like almost every month when they first came out, like that first year or so, year and a half. And then they added another layer with a story on there, because the story was pretty bare bones at first. Like it was kind of like in Palworld, like you'd find these little notes around the world, and you can, for the lore and stuff like that. But then they added some more like actual story. Like when you go into that game now, there's actually like a cutscene with, some story element into it, which you didn't really see before, other than just like waking up on the island. So, I think these games have to throw out there and throw something, unique. Obviously, like Palworld is like the Pokemon-like creatures, so the Pokemon with guns. So if they can do that, then obviously, yeah, they're going to hit an audience. But they, once again, like I've said with all the other games, they got to keep it up though. They got to keep up these updates, and because otherwise, it's just going to die in the vine, like with all these other games. So.
Oh, it's super funny, going through the games that you mentioned, looking at the Steam chart. So Rust, which is when you mentioned Rust, I was gonna poke you with the incredulity stick, and then I look at it, because very quietly, without a lot of conversation, a lot of buzz around it, it's sitting at 13th in concurrent users, right, with at 141 for its peak today.
Yeah, it's usually up there on the charts.
Yeah, but nobody mentions that. Nobody talks about it.
No.
Ark, I didn't realize, actually has 2 variants deployed, and so it has Ark Survival Evolved and then Ark Ascended.
Yeah, Ascended is the remake basically of Evolved, the UE5 remake basically.
Okay, and that's the one that's struggling right now.
Right, correct. Yeah.
So it's in at that remake is in at number 66 with 22 players peaked today, and Survival Evolved is in at 57th with 37,000 players peaked today. So, and of course, Palworld is in at 1.3 million peaked today. Now, also the Steam chart, which often gets touted and weaponized, has a pretty radically broad range. So the number 100 game, which happens to be Starfield, gets into number 100 at 13,500 players. Right? That's a huge drop from the top of the chart, which is 1.3 million. In terms of scale, only Palworld and Counter-Strike 2 are at the top of the charts with over 1 million players. Then you really don't even go that far down before you're even out of the 100,000. Starting at number 11 on down, you're not even in 100,000 players, right? So, peak. Well, there's a few handful. I guess this chart is really sorted by concurrent players. So, but there's a huge swath of variance, right, when you talk about these top 100 games on Steam. So, just a cautionary tale and kind of looking at these as a statistic. But yeah, no, that's good commentary, Tao, and it definitely paints the story of kind of it gives me that image of like the guys like in that the old World War II movies, down in the engine room of the submarine, with just water bursting out of the pipes all over, right, and them just constantly like they're constantly just trying to get water right out of the sub to keep it afloat, and that's kind of what these games are like, regardless of how successful we view them. There's a development team kind of working that I think personally is we're kind of working on the surface, right, that everybody kind of sees and focuses on, and they're the ones always talking and kind of yapping about the new content coming. But below there's guys down in the engine room in the sub, right, right, pumping water out of these bursting pipes, to keep the thing running. And they're the one. I often talked about this, when I've worked jobs of similar nature, in terms of analog, and there are lots of those jobs that are kind of thankless. Like nobody ever says thank you for the fact that their toilet flushes, right, or that they have shower water. But the moment those things break, right, that's the thing that people are going to squawk about. And the people who maintain those things and keep them running, it is often a thankless job, but it is a job, ebullient with blood, sweat, and tears, right, to keep those things going.
Did you see Enshrouded in that list, like anywhere into the top by any chance? I was just wondering because I know when Palworld was obviously hitting it big and stuff, like there was people talking about Enshrouded. I was like, oh, that's the better game, blah blah blah. But
yeah, it's in a number 9 with 155 players peak.
Okay, yeah, so it's another big survival game, crafting game. So
yeah, and it's also always super interesting looking at this list because like the things that are up here, particularly for console gamers, but even for PC gamers, are just things no one talks about. Like there's your handful of things people will recognize, like Palworld, Baldur's Gate 3, your Call of Duties, Apex Legends, Rainbow Six Siege. But then, you have things up here like Warframe. And Warframe has a good reputation, but I don't think people understand that it's constantly like in the top 100. Lethal Company, Lost Ark, Amazon's game, Unturned, which I don't know that anybody even knows about. You just mentioned Enshrouded, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck Enshrouded is. Super interesting to see Grand Blue Fantasy Relink up here over the weekend, which is good. Monster Hunter World, which is what is that, DBQ? Is that a 2017, 18, 19 game?
I think it's a 17 game. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, always super interesting. Payday 2 in here at number 33, having been superseded by Payday 3 last fall. Still up there. Good to see Tekken 8 tracking. Terraria always kind of gains traction, but that's a game that, not a lot of people know. Hearts of Iron 4, Elder Scrolls. This is actually the special edition. So, of course, people constantly playing that. It's on sale for $10 now, by the way, if you just want to buy a game with, a bajillion mods. But anyway, yeah, it's super interesting conversation, guys. Thanks very much. Tao, I'm sorry. While we have talked about some harsh realities and also some sad news, Tao is yet eyeing yet another toy.
That's right. So PDP is actually going to be releasing a new wireless guitar controller for Rock Band 4, which I always forget there's a Rock Band 4, but also it'll eventually work for Fortnite Festival, which is pretty much Rock Band. That's housed within Fortnite. And just a couple interesting things on this one. Once again, it's a wireless controller. I don't know if I ever saw any wireless instruments back in the day with Guitar Hero and Rock Band. They're usually wired. And then it has a 3.5 millimeter audio jack in it, which I don't think any of them ever did, along with a thumbstick that's on the very top, the back of the neck of the guitar, like near the top of it. A battery life of 36 hours on a single charge. And also, when you're, if you're taking it places, transporting or whatever, it actually folds down from the neck. So the neck folds back into the kind of the body of the guitar, which is kind of cool. It's kind of interesting, which was kind of weird. But I thought that was kind of a cool design also. And then, because I guess people like to customize stuff to the front of the body of the guitar. So like where the whammy bar is and the strum, so the guitar itself is all black except for that kind of piece right there in that section. It's like a light gray, so you can actually pop that off, and I guess they'll have like multiple colors, I'm sure, and different things you can pop on there for customization. So just I know they had announced this kind of I guess they had teased it at the end of the year last year, 2023, excuse me, and now the official announcement had come out last week that they're going to be releasing this sometime this spring.
Yeah, I didn't see a price point with it. Did you?
No, yeah, there hasn't been any price yet either, so we'll have to see. I'm trying to remember. Do you remember what the original like guitars were priced at?
No, I mean,
I would say,
go ahead.
Wasn't the whole kit like $250?
Yeah, back like as a new release, it might have been like the whole Rock Band kit was probably $250.
Maybe.
I think the game and the guitar was probably like $99.99 type of thing. Or if you could buy extra guitars for $50 to $60. Yeah, I would. $100 is probably a reasonable at this point. No, I looked at it. It got me to go out and hunt down to see what pricing on Rock Band 4 was, because it's like, okay, I could go for some music game again.
Yeah, we're never gonna see this again. So.
No,
Rock Band 4 pre-orders. The full band set for Rock Band 4, the game, the drums, the microphone, and one guitar was $250. For comparison's sake, the original Rock Band bundle. Let's see. Yeah, this was so that was in 2015. That was for Rock Band 4. Mm-hmm. So the original Rock Band bundle was $170, while the Rock Band 2 bundle cost $190. So for $250, even I'm impressed by an MSRP of $250. It was even cheaper in previous iterations, right, of Rock Band and Rock Band 2. I mean, you got the whole thing. Again, the game. I mean, today that's a $70 purchase just for the game,
right?
And then you got the drum set, the microphone, and a guitar at $250. So I mean,
the days of plastic instruments. We didn't know how good we had it.
No,
No, right? I think that the price point on those things, and now, as we've talked about, I don't know, probably last year when Fortnite Festival came out, right? Like finding a used one at this point, for a full kit, you could be paying $500 to $900 depending on the system and everything else.
Yeah. So to buy them separately, right? Game itself was $60 for PlayStation 4 or Xbox One just for the game. Which was, remember back in the day, now we're taking a walk down nostalgia, lane. Remember, like by the time you were getting a Rock Band 4, you had so many people who were like, oh yeah, I already bought the instruments. So now I just got to buy the game, and, forward compatibility was always a discussion. Then you could just buy the guitar with the game, which was $130. And Guitar Hero at the time was charging $100 for the game and a guitar. And then we go into the bundle. I was trying to find the price for like just the guitar, but yeah,
right. And that's not even like Rock Band 3 had a keyboard with it at one point in time, or you could have there was a real guitar that could also play with it, which was even more expensive. I mean, there was all kinds of the proliferation of peripherals, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and these are just going to be on consoles, so at least for right now. So Xbox Series XS and then Xbox One. And then the same for PS4 and PS5.
Which basically, I mean, the most recent ones are PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is Rock Band 4, because that was 2017, I think. But the fact that they're still backwards compatible.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's really no mention. And I haven't even. Yeah, there hasn't been any. There's no mention in there of at least the Xbox One being compatible with PC.
No, it didn't say anything about it. Yeah, I haven't seen. I actually could look for that because I was like, I kind of play on PC more than anything. I mean, I still have my Xbox, but either way, I'll be able to play it. So,
yeah, I think the timing of this announcement makes sense as well, because it came only a week or two after Rock Band and Harmonix got a little bit of press for their final DLC, as they're stopping DLC, but their DLC store is still available, so there's still a lot out there. If there are, it'll be interesting to see if there's a market for this, right?
So help me out, because I didn't play any of the Fortnite, expandables. So what are people using in the rock thing for Fortnite?
You either use your controller or you use the keyboard.
Yeah.
How I haven't used a keyboard with it. I've only used no, it's true. I've used both because I have played it on keyboard as well. And it
Yeah.
on your controller, it's the left and right on the D-pad, or it's the X and B button,
Yeah.
like your two kind of east and west buttons to simulate the 4 tracks.
Yeah, I found it easier on the controller. I tried both also on this keyboard. I couldn't do it like whatsoever. I'm sure I could have configured it probably so it would have worked better, but controller was way easier for me when I did play it.
Gotcha. And of course, PDP is a company that we've discussed recently on this channel, being one of the first companies that are deploying the Samsung certified controller accessories for use with their Samsung gaming portal that's available on their televisions. Yep. DBQ, you want to talk about
Sure,
IDOS Montreal?
I'll bring us right back around to some more layoffs. So, yeah, this is IDOS Montreal. And if you remember, IDOS Montreal was sold off by Square Enix maybe 2 years ago at this point, and it was at the time so welcomely embraced by the Embracer Group, which as everything connected to the Embracer Group over the last 6 months, or almost the last year since they announced their kind of restructuring, it's excuse me, it's been a matter of time until they continue to lay off and thin out studios. And Embracer IDOS Montreal is the next one in this. So it's laid off 97 staff. And that in the process of that, it also announced that an unnamed Deus Ex project is being canceled as well. So it's been quite a long time until we've seen a Deus Ex game. We had Mankind Divided and Human Revolution back in the 360 PlayStation, just at the tail end of the 360 Xbox One, PlayStation 4 kind of transfer over, because I think that was one of those that was launched on both systems. And then IDOS Montreal has gone off to do more Tomb Raider things. They did Guardians of the Galaxy, which we talked about here and made our superlative show in terms of its humor back when it came out 2 years ago. So again, it is more of this is one more studio that is downsizing in terms of staff. We don't have any details in terms of where those staff are, what positions that is, how much of that is connected to trying to work on the Deus Ex game, how much of it is just general other staff and development. So, but it's, as we talked about last week with Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, the idea of what's the capacity of a studio after, depending on the degree that it has seen these types of layoffs, and how much of it is I think IDOS Montreal, no, it was Crystal Dynamics is the one that was working with Microsoft in terms of one of their undeveloped or unpublished games yet. So it again raises the question of what's next for IDOS Montreal.
Yeah, they were helping with Perfect Dark.
That's it.
Perfect Dark game.
That's it.
Yep. Yeah, I never played any of the newer Deus Ex games, only the original.
They're fun. I mean, you could probably find them for pretty cheap. I enjoyed both of them, played them on PC. They definitely kind of are of the time period, but there's some good kind of character development and multiple paths and kind of different builds that are successful there.
Yeah, I always heard that they're really good. I just never got around to them. So maybe on like on sale, I grab both of them.
Yeah, I would definitely think Mankind Divided, and I'm not sure. Did you call that one 2016 DBQ?
Looking it up right now to see which one is.
Oh no, I've got it. I wasn't sure if we had that. Yeah,
I think whichever one, the second one came out right crossing the. Well, no, when did it come out? 2016.
Yeah, well, there's been 4 primary entries. So Deus Ex was 2000, Deus Ex Invisible War, which was kind of, even though that one seems to, it's weird. I have this memory of it not reviewing well, but I think it did actually review well. But it was heavily, in my mind, PC gamers at least heavily criticized it because it was it was a complete consolification of the original Deus Ex design, because the original Deus Ex was just on PC, but Invisible War went to consoles. And then Human Revolution would have been the tail end of the 360 generation a couple of years before the Xbox One would have launched.
Yep.
Yeah, and then Mankind Divided to me was kind of peak. That was 2016, firmly kind of in the PS4, Xbox One generation. I mean, was just really remarkable in terms of how it looked on PC, and definitely kind of, to me, kind of weaved together, I guess, what was kind of a precursor of kind of cyberpunk kind of gameplay, intermixed with a little bit of kind of Ubisoft Far Cry-ish kind of content, right? In just terms of all the different things that you could do and all the different like builds you could make and paths you could follow. So it's a really great game, in my opinion. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Hopefully we'll see some spin on somebody getting a hold of that IP and bringing it back eventually. Last story in the rundown is over on PC Games, and Suicide Squad's day one Steam peak less than half of Marvel's Avengers. Kind of curious given the extensive discussion we had about Steam chart player base. And I quote, "The Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League day one player peak on Steam is half that of fellow superhero live service game Marvel's Avengers. After accounting for both games leaving early access, there are 4 seasons of content and big plans yet to come for Rocksteady's first game since Batman Arkham Knight." So, I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs of early access time windows and all that, but basically Marvel's Avengers had a peak player count of pretty much close to 30,000 when it initially launched. The peak for Suicide Squad looks to be around 13,000. So Suicide Squad is a thing that I have held, was kind of had an uphill battle from the get, right? Despite the zeitgeist that runs around of people, loving villains and blah, 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 blah. The fact of the matter is that in terms of commerciality, villain-oriented stories, movies, books, all that thing, like struggle, like comic books. Like you are never going to see a lengthy run, almost never, of a villain as a central character comic book. Darth Vader is maybe an exception. But in general, when Marvel or DC has gone down this path of trying to give Doctor Doom his own book, or all these things, they just never, because despite all the yapping and verbal outcry and support that goes along with it, the fact of the matter is that people like heroes, people like good guys. That's what they tend to spend money on. And so Suicide Squad was kind of always have an uphill battle. I mentioned, on another podcast earlier this week, the fan base wasn't really particularly happy with the Arrowverse rendition of the Suicide Squad. The movies, I think, have captured a little bit of traction. People like the Peacekeeper spinoff, but there's also been, a lot of criticism, right, about the Suicide Squad take, and about how sometimes it kind of brings in like these characters that nobody cares about. But the tough thing with the Suicide Squad has always historically been, across all of the media implementations of it, is that in order for it to really gain traction, members of the squad have to be expendable. You have to believe that some of the members are going to die. And without that, it struggles. And that was part of the problem with the Arrowverse version. Like, it wasn't, you weren't really certain, after they keep showing up several times, you're like, no, these guys are dying, and they're called the Suicide Squad. So this game, in my opinion, just kind of on its content and its premise, was always going to be skating uphill. But then the other thing is, and this is the big knock on the video game, is people have the recent history of Marvel's Avengers, and a lot of what Rocksteady messaged about Suicide Squad made us feel like this was another Avengers coming down the pike. And so here we are, right, with that comparison. So, surprisingly enough, maybe not surprisingly enough, but, the interesting thing is the last time I checked, I'm going to check one more time, it was doing well on Steam from a user review standpoint. And yeah, it's very positive right now, with 2,400 players playing. Now, what that means is that there's not a ton of people playing it, right, at only 2,400 people over the first weekend. So I want to say there's like almost 10 times as many reviews for No, I can't. Avengers has been delisted on Steam. So
Yeah, you can't track it down anymore. It's been
yeah,
off. Yep.
there was another game that I looked at recently that had something like 13,000 reviews. Right, and I'm kind of looking at it to get into those numbers. But so right now it appears a pretty small player base. 25 people having submitted reviews. I don't know that I've seen sales numbers for Suicide Squad yet, but it's got to struggle. But critically, there appears to be content that people like from a Steam community perspective, at least. Any comments on the story from you guys?
Oh, I mean, I am such a mixed bag on this. Like, as much as I hoped and wanted it to be really good, and reading so many reviews, listening to people, that there's some really good things about it. But I think in this day and age, not only as I said earlier, is it hard for small teams to break through with unknown IPs, it's also really difficult for large teams, even with known IPs, to sustain that, right? I mean, I was a huge fan of Avengers, the Marvel's Avengers coming out of Crystal Dynamics. In terms of the story that it told, the gameplay got pretty, rinse and repeat pretty quickly, but at its core, there was a neat single player game there. I think that, and I also have enjoyed Gotham Knights from 2 years ago at this point. Right, like that was one of those where a lot of the narrative around it when it released was that this was a live service game that was changed over the course of development, and you could still see some of the bones in the structure of that. And that's coming from the same publisher, to then have one game that they changed course on. I wouldn't necessarily call course correct, because it depends. It still didn't necessarily sell well, but to have another game kind of lean further in and keep that model this day and age, when we've seen so many live service games struggle, and even the successful kind of legacy games like Division 2 and Destiny 2 are still at a point where they're struggling, right? Like the live service model around the cooperative piece looks to be really a whether it was an abnormality, right? Did we hit a window of time where that was a successful piece? Like the live service things around battle royale, massive kind of PvP types of games seems to stay consistent and has certainly some staying power and a long-term piece, but that the aspect of the PvE around a live service game, I don't know that we've seen. I mean, I don't know that we've seen a really successful one that has been able to sustain itself, right? We've had good launches. We had a good launch of Outriders, but that hasn't necessarily hung on. We didn't even have a really good launch of Avengers. We all know what Anthem was, right? I struggle to think about outside of the Division 2, which was 2018 probably, right? 19 maybe. Has there been another one in the last 5 years that has held on and been a success for a studio? So I guess all that's to say, like, it could be a really solid game. I think it, like you said, it's got a really stacked deck against it.
Yeah, no, you bring up some good points, and Outriders was one that I looked at over this weekend while I was looking at the Suicide Squad numbers, and Outriders right now is mostly positive on Steam community reviews out of 100 or so recent reviews. Overall, it's mixed at 66%. So, but yeah, and I want to say maybe voice track wise, if we only go by what we hear that people would be super interested in co-op and PvE. But numbers wise, like you said, like they just don't track, as much as PvP for whatever reason, which is weird because most of the problem with PvP is people don't like going in there and getting, seal clubbed and bodied, by competitive players. But, and so you would think that there would be a bigger addressable market for PvE PvE, right, for people who love just playing with their friends. But again, going back to commerciality, right, it just doesn't stack up, which is a shame, because we all ostensibly kind of really liked Anthem, from a gameplay and a gameplay mechanic standpoint, regardless of end game content and all that other stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see how this fares. It seems like most of the PvE stuff is being stuffed into PvP games, right? Meaning like the Gears of War Horde thing that came out, Hivebusters, that came out, or being tacked on to like a Resident Evil remake, or it's very funny because I remember the very strenuous arguments that we had about battle royales and my insistence that they should just be a mode and not games on their own, and yet here they are. Here's a mode that I love, PvE, and that's kind of where it's kind of evolved to, where it's really just a mode. It finds its most traction when it's a mode packed into a PvP game, just like kind of zombies, right, for Call of Duty. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. Tao, any comments before we go on to briefing out our games?
No, I think you guys said pretty much everything. I mean, and for me personally, it was never on my radar. I wasn't interested at all. Like, I never even played the Gotham game or the Batman games from the same studio. So, I mean, it's the only thing I've played recently was Gotham Knights, which DB had mentioned also, which I'm more interested in the Batman universe. I'm more interested in the sidekicks than, I think we've mentioned this too before. I mentioned the sidekicks than, Batman himself or, any of these other characters. So it was never kind of on my radar. I mean, I want to say I kind of feel bad for the studio, just because obviously this is something they've been working on for a long time, and they're I don't want to say but I hopefully still are well respected, because obviously the Batman games were huge, and they were, as far as I've read and heard, they were excellent games, but they're getting all this flack now. And obviously we had I think it was two of the studio heads that left last year at some point before the game came out. So
the two, like, principal leads and founders of the studio departed.
Yeah. So there's all all the talk and rumor about that. Like, well, I guess they because they left, then this game must is going to be bad, or whatever they're trying to say. But it's just like it just kind of sucks that people were already down on this game before it even came out. Just because of everything that had come out about it. And obviously, yeah, there's previews and stuff like that. But my philosophy is, at least play the game before you crap on it. that's what I always want to say. So, but I guess that's it.
Okay, so I will be playing it by ear through segment 3. We have somewhere between 16 minutes and 29 minutes, depending on what perspective you look at the timers and clocks. So Divinity, so I'll start off. I've been playing Divinity Original Sin 2 on the Nintendo Switch. So definitely, Baldur's Gate 3 kind of sparked a desire in me to kind of go back and put hands on this game. If you recall, I kind of struggled with onboarding of it on PC. I mean, on the Switch, because getting to tutorials and tooltips and things like that weren't as easy as they were on PC. Didn't have as much time getting back to it this time again, kind of going through the onboarding. And again, maybe that's because playing it on PC did its job. Because I felt like I had to go and do some homework on PC. Maybe the recent playing Baldur's Gate 3 helped kind of keep it fresh in my mind how the game worked. So I'm having a good time with it. I'm going at it a little differently, because typically with these games, Larian Studios, D&D games, whatever, I don't play the pre-canned characters, but I am this time around. I'm playing Fane, which is kind of this weird undead kind of skeletal character who has to wear something over his face to kind of cover the fact that he is some type of undead creature. But playing this in handheld mode on the Nintendo Switch LCD, and as I was commenting a little bit earlier today, the advent of the Steam Deck has not made the Nintendo Switch obsolete. It's a better form factor. It's a lot lighter in the hand. It's more comfortable to hold for a lengthy period of time. Actually ran the battery, stayed in one session long enough that I ran the battery down completely on the Nintendo Switch LCD. So I'm having a good time with it. that has been my big single player RPG game. Tao, you've been playing something a little more multiplayer focused.
Yeah, so I did get to play one other game this past week, other than Palworld, and that was the finals. I jumped back into a little bit the last couple days. They have the second solo LTM mode that they just introduced this past week. The first one was just it was just a banquet mode, which is kind of like the regular mode where you get the cash boxes and take it to a deposit box. And that was a solo mode with 12 players. And then this is something similar, but you can only play as the tank character, so it's kind of the larger character. And then there's also some free cosmetics that you can get as you do, like their missions or quests that, for this mode. So I wanted to jump in to try to get some of that stuff, and I played it a couple hours maybe at the most for the last couple days, and I was able to get through all the getting all the cosmetics. So nothing too hard, and it probably helps too that I normally play the larger tank character, so I was very familiar with that. So it was pretty fun to jump back in and get back into that game. So I played a little bit of just the regular three team modes, just by myself, just with randoms, so not with my friends or anything. So but yeah, it was fun to get out of Palworld, I guess, for a little bit. Appreciate another game, even though it's something I had been playing anyways for the last few weeks. But it was kind of nice to get back into that game.
So talk to me again about how, because this game has the heavy, medium, light, but you don't like hero-based shooters. So so are these builds, less than kind of hero archetypes, or what's the difference between this and like an Overwatch?
I think it's more because it's just like it's going back to that Call of Duty. I talk Call of Duty Pass because it's just a shooter. I don't have to do like special, like, yeah, you get accessories and stuff, but it's mainly just shooting and running around, and you have some abilities where you can kind of like jump out really high, or like there's zip lines and stuff like that. But it's nothing like super crazy like Overwatch, where there's a bunch of particular set of skills for each person. Like each person here is, yeah, you have different guns and different some different accessories. There's some that are interchangeable between the light, medium, and large, but for the most part, it's just guns and grenades. That's it. So there's nothing like super extra. So I think that's why I kind of gravitate to this a little bit more. It's more than I'm familiar with.
Okay, well, on that note, that is exactly what I've been playing. I've spent some time going back to Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, trying to continue to progress my battle pass. I'm not certain that I will finish it before the season's over. I think on Thursday, is when season 1 ends. They've got some interesting things coming in season 2, of particular what I really thought was interesting, and I really need to spend some time playing this maybe before the season ends, but they have an LTM that includes like 6 of the Modern Warfare 2 maps. So it would be nice to go back and kind of play those games that are in recent nostalgia, and refresh those maps. I probably should definitely take advantage of that before the season ends. But yeah, I've been having a good time with it. I've been spending a lot of time working shotgun and pistols, which is just a very emasculating thing to have to go through. Fortunately, I made the decision a few months ago just to embrace the cheese. And when I'm working shotgun and pistols, just to go ahead and play Rust and Shipment, and play those LTMs that are all mosh pit on Shipment, or I think right now the mode is Rustment, which basically takes like the 6 mosh pit modes and only cycles you onto the Rust or the Shipment map. I think I've expanded on the cheese, and now, although I have one primary kit custom loadout that is shotgun and a pistol as my 2P, I picked like an alternate mode. So because on Shipment you could play shotgun and pistol, and be relatively fine. Helps to have good tactical and lethal gear to go along with it. I don't know that smoke grenades is the thing that you should have in your build, but it was kind of funny. I was playing a match and I was running around chucking smoke grenades every time I turned a corner on Shipment, and so then I would run down the sides of the ship and then show up amidst the enemies out of the smoke, spraying my shotgun. Um, but then Rust, I feel like, doesn't lend itself well to shotgun because there's so many kind of long lanes of fire. So the first time the first session I played, I just kind of struggled trying to play shotgun and pistol on Rust. But the second time I came around to it, I was like, okay, let me go ahead and be ready and pick my Rust pistol loadout when I get shipment. But if I get Rust, let me have this alternate loadout. So that has worked out pretty well. So DBQ.
Yeah, so I thought I was going to be playing some Persona 3, the remaster that came out this week, and I didn't quite get around to it. So, but I got it downloaded, but in the process of downloading it, I played two other Game Pass, like quick little games, and sunk a little bit of time in there, but unfortunately didn't get a chance. So next week, that'll be hopefully talk a little bit more about Persona 3. I had played it back on the PSP way back in the day as well. But I played 2 games that came out this week on Game Pass were Go Mecha Ball, which is kind of a combo of let's say Marble Madness versus a twin stick shooter. You've got the ability, you're kind of in like a Marble Madness type of stage, but you are shooting enemies, but also can roll around the ball, swapping weapons out. It was okay. Like, it's got some pretty positive reviews on the Steam, but it's, I could see if you're playing co-op with a group of people, could be fun. As a single player piece, I was enjoyed what I played and was glad to put it down. Also picked up Brotato, which Swiss has talked about. It was on one of his lists of superlatives at the end of the year, and it's it is on mobile, it's on PC. It is Vampire Survivors, more or less, with a little different skin and setup and a few takes, but that idea of adding different types of weapons on top of it, you can see it's kind of mobile PC base of it as well. So fun game, easy to pick up. Also, don't feel bad that if I maybe never touch it again. So just a few quick ones there, but we'll move on to the next one.
All right, Tao and Palworld.
Yeah, continuing on my Palworld world. I actually got like 3 different worlds now that I'm working on. Technically 4, but the Xbox One, like I said earlier, I don't really touch too much now. But I have my solo just world I'm kind of working through, and then I started one with my friend that I play all these other games with. Was kind of surprised that he jumped on it, and he could play a little. He could play a lot more than I can right now, but he's crazy, like 150 hours already into the game. I think I'm like 55 maybe or so. So I'm playing a lot of it. And then I started a world with my son. My son picked it up too last weekend. So we've been going through that. But just going through, picking up my pals and catching them. And I just started doing they have a breeding mechanic in there, of course, also. So I've been starting to do that, which I never actually I don't think I ever really did that too much in Pokemon, or even in Arc all that much, because in Arc it would take forever to for that process to go through. So here it's not too bad. So maybe 5 to 10 minutes for most eggs, and I think there's some that could be up to an hour or so. I haven't hit any of those yet. Those are like super rare ones. So, but I mean, if that happens, I'll just throw it down there, and I can just go do something else. So gone through some of the, I guess you call them like mini bosses that you can kind of see throughout the world. So I've been taking those down. Those give you a lot of XP. So just trying to bump up my XP and just unlock different stuff in the tech tree. So it's going through that.
So you have in the agenda, you have PC and SD. Oh, Steam Deck. Okay,
Steam Deck. Yeah. I played probably majority of it on Steam Deck the last few weeks. So it's pretty easy just to pop on, when I'm at home, or even when I'm commuting. I take the train to work now, so it's kind of nice just to pop that in and do something for about an hour or so.
Does Palworld have any anti-cheat woven into it?
I thought they had put. No, I think they're working on that actually right now. I don't think they've implemented anything yet, because I know that was a big thing too. I think after that first week that there's a lot of cheaters going on, and actually people going on to people's servers and just like taking control of it, and bumping people off and doing just jerky stuff like that. So, but I don't think they've implemented anything quite yet.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see when that comes in. My understanding is that anti-cheat is the Achilles heel of the Steam Deck, because so many of the implementations are Windows based. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and it's not verified right now, so but it runs fine when I'm haven't had any issues.
All right. Well, speaking of the Nintendo Switch, I finally got a hold of Titan's Quest for the Nintendo Switch. I can't even remember. So this is a THQ game that came out in the early 2000s, very much a Diablo-like. So it was very kind of interesting because it was the only game of that ilk that I can recall that kind of stuck the landing, because everything else that had tried to kind of mimic Diablo had been a failure. So Titan's Quest on the Nintendo Switch has its share of issues. I think some of those might be user problems, but also user problems driven by like a very obtuse kind of Byzantine interface that, takes some time to figure out. My current problem is the character seems to kind of auto-lock on characters, and it may auto-lock on an enemy on the complete opposite side of the map from a given segment that you're playing in. And until I figure out, and that's for whatever reason, when they're locked, that is the only character that they will attack. And so even though you're trying to turn the controller or have them focus on somebody else, you can't attack them because it will only attack the person that they're locked on. So that's something I gotta figure out and try and pull apart. But in general, I'm having a good time with it. I had ordered a physical copy, which never got here, so I'd gotten a refund for that. And so this time I was like, yeah, never mind. I'm just gonna get digital.
How does it run on the Switch?
It runs fine. I haven't played it docked, so I don't really know, what it looks like on a screen. But in handheld mode, it's not the most graphically impressive, but it also plays, fairly well and fluid, minus the bugs and hiccups, that I seem to have come across. So.
Also a almost 20-year-old game, right? So it's not going to be graphically impressive at this point. Yeah.
Yep. The other game, that is graphically impressive is Forza Motorsport that I've been playing over on the Xbox. And the tail of the tape of that is it still, in my mind, still has problems on PC, mainly in that, it's not that the game looks bad on PC, it's that you really have to get under the hood and finagle with your video graphic settings to get a smooth experience, and then you will sometimes be, I mean, it's one of the few games that I had to run like multiple instances of the in-game benchmark to get a result that I was happy with and one that made sense. A lot of times you'll tweak one thing, and it'll be like a significant impact to frame rate. So, it's something you have to mess with on PC. On Xbox, none of those problems. Pick a resolution, and it runs fine. I'm a little kind of salty about the fact that the only two frame rate options it offers are 4K 30 or 4K 60. So it just doesn't give you the option to drop to a lower resolution and therefore, get some more frames out of it. So that's aggravating. There's some aggravating aspects of the career mode, but kind of in the same, two different sets of causality. But my feelings about it are pretty much the same that I have with like the Gran Turismo series. I'm like, why are you pushing me all through all these goofy gates that I don't care about? You're right to allow me to get to the racing that I really want to. So, there's a bit of hitchiness to that. Turns out you can skip the 3-lap practice round that it makes available, but I tend not to. In Formula One, over the years, I used to hate the practice program. But over the years, I've come to realize the advantages you gain from, running it, not just in terms of like, car points or, whatever you get, which you do get from running these practice sessions, which you can then apply to upgrades. Just from the notion of familiarity, right? Without the pressure of a 24-car field, also trying to go by, it's interesting. I sometimes go from practice session 3 into the race, and I'll be barreling down into turn 1, and I'm like, the cars are not like I can't see because I've got all these cars ahead of me, like where this thing turns. So, but I've been having a pretty good time with it. It still has some imperfections. I'm still not. I wouldn't say happy with it, but it has crossed kind of my minimum threshold of like, okay, you can be in the stable with the other racing games that I kind of keep at my fingertips. But DBQ, why don't you round us out with an equally fast character of some of the cars that I drive in Forza Motorsport?
Nice segue. Yes. So, Sonic Superstars on Xbox. I had talked about it a couple weeks ago that I had a chance to play with it with my kids over the holiday break. Came back to it, excuse me. This past weekend, and I played with the ideal audience, a second grader who loves Sonic. He is like drawing pictures of Sonic. He like has a Sonic encyclopedia. He has like, we're playing it, and he's talking through all the different bosses because he's watched YouTube videos about them. So like, I may not appreciate it in terms of, as we talked about, kind of the broken multiplayerness of it, but watching it, experiencing it through the lens of a second grader who is just like excited to play a character, I can understand why they continue to pump these out year after year. As we just this week got the Sonic Generation Shadow remaster announcement on the heels of Sonic's 30th anniversary. So just a quick hit there. Again, not a strong recommendation for the game itself, but the joy that is experiencing games through so many different lenses. You know, we often experience it through multiplayers and with our own kids, but seeing it even with a younger kid was really something that I could appreciate and was thankful to.
All right, well, that rounds out our segment 3. Going into our what's up next. For me, I am going to be playing Halo Infinite on the PC. So actually, once we get off here, I'm going to jump off here and go over there and get into some finish the fight, space age battles in Halo Infinite. So, ostensibly here on the heels of hearing that this will be the final season of Halo Infinite. So, it is what it is. And we'll just kind of hang on and play through and kind of see what the future looks like for that game. Tao, what are you going to be into next?
Yep, still playing Palworld. So there's these towers around the world that are basically like the bosses of kind of, I don't want to say each section, but just kind of sprinkled throughout the world or the map. I beat one of them with my friends when we were playing. I want to try to do it by myself. I'll see how that goes because they're pretty pumped up, those bosses, as far as health. So we'll see how that goes over the week, and hopefully I'll at least beat one of them because I think there's like 4 or 5. So the gym leaders of Palworld basically is what they are.
All right, then DBQ, anything on your list or on your radar?
Yeah, like I said, I think I'll take a stab at Persona 3, the remaster here.
Okay. Anybody thinking about playing Grand Blue or Tekken 8?
No.
Nope. Sorry.
I'm done with Tekken.
Just like if I'm passing on
I won't play Tekken anymore.
Suicide Squad, I think I'm passing on Tekken 8. So
what was the other one? Grand Blue? Is that what?
Yeah, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. It's a new JRPG that's out.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not. I can't do JRPGs. Try.
DBQ, you were one of our resident JRPG.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's one of those where I'm gonna wait. I'm interested in it. Art style looks good, but I've got plenty of other JRPG backlogs that it'll probably go on a list to keep an eye on when it hits a Steam sale, and seems like a good Steam Deck game in terms of something to curl up on a couch and grind away some levels.
It is both of those. When I hope to see, and expect to see, kind of in the summer sale or the holiday sale this year. Very cool. So next episode, Tao Master will be the Master of Ceremonies with DBQ and I backing him up. For anybody out there who was in the live chat tonight, we appreciate you. For anybody out there who happens to watch the archive version of this podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, we appreciate you as well. Please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just receive a notification whenever we post new content. We will be back next Sunday. Wait, is next Sunday the Super Bowl?
Next Sunday is the Super Bowl, so we'll have to figure that out. But
okay, all right. Well, yeah, just stand by for word. If you see that we're not going to be here, then you'll know why. So until next time, Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like. Come here to talk to us about the games that you like. Once again, my name has been Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, here with my additional co-hosts, DBQ Hams and Towmaster99. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.